Okay, so good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the next of our In Conversation With series. Last year, our members asked us to interview some of the pinnacle people within our profession. And so far, we've had the opportunity to interview Lindsay Taylor, Lucy Brazier, and now we have the wonderful opportunity to interview Amanda Johnson, who is VA coach from VACT Limited. Amanda, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I was going to say, big shoes to follow. Lindsay, Lucy. I'm not nervous at all now.
Oh, bless you. No, well, we caught up with you. I think it's it's been a couple of years since we've done this with our members. So it's just wonderful to have the opportunity to welcome you back. So thank you so much for joining us. And we know that I wanted to ask how it is going with your house build at the moment, because you've been living a kind of nomadic life, I guess, over the last couple of years, here and there and everywhere. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Okay, so the nomadic bit has only actually been for the last 9 months, although it feels like it does feel like years. So during lockdown, homeschooled, all of those things that we do during that sort of phase, run my business, homeschooled, hubby ran his business. And then children went back to school March last year, and literally children were going back on the Monday. Hubby and I looked at each other and went, should we sell? Oh yeah, that's a good idea. So we put the house on the market, as you do. We saw a beautiful plot of land, 9.5 acres, 7 derelict barns, and went, yeah, we want it. So tried to buy it, couldn't buy it at the time, etc. We hadn't sold, and it went off the market. And we were like, oh, lost it. Then we got a buyer for our house, and we went, do you know what? We'll take it, and we'll move into rented or whatever. Literally, we accepted the offer on the Tuesday. On the Wednesday, the land came back on the market, and we put an offer in, and we bought 9.5 acres, 7 derelict barns with planning permission for a house. So come September last year, we moved out of our house and we moved into a motorhome, supposed to be on site up at the farm, but we had no water or electricity, so I couldn't do that. And so we've literally been going campsites and things like that for the last 9 months, until just after Easter, when we moved onto the site, onto our own land, when we got electricity. And so now we are here. And I reckon it's going to be about another 6 weeks before we're into the first of the properties. We are lodging, I think is the best description, in what will be my new office. I'm not going to show the viewers of this, my pile of crap that's to the side of me, but for those that already know me or on my coaching calls as part of my VA community, they've already seen the pile of crap. And I've literally turned my computer and things like that. That's why Sarah's giggling, because Sarah's seen the pile of crap behind me before, and I've turned my computer and just got another wall behind me at the minute.
Oh, do you know what? I think it's hugely inspiring, and I'm a massive believer in fate. I do think everything happens for a reason. So to see that happen so quickly after you sold your house, it was like it was meant to be. Lovely. And so yes, you might be have had to live in different motorhomes, etc., in different locations, but what an adventure, and what an adventure that's probably been for your family. And you look very, very calm and collected, considering
I'm like a swan pedaling like hell underneath. And it has been an adventure. It's really interesting. If you say to my children about it at the moment, I've got 2 children, 8 and 12. They are enjoying it, but they're ready for their own space. And if you ask my 8-year-old, he says, Mummy, I just want my own space. And he's like, I'm like, okay, all right, I get that. We all would like. And I'm like, well, what do you want your own space for? And I share this because it's the bit that makes me chuckle. He says, I'd like to be able to fart and nobody else hear it. Or I'd like not to hear anybody else's farts. And I was just like, in the real simplest terms, that's why he wants his own space, not to listen to somebody else fart.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Well, you are going to have to keep us updated about how it's all going. And I think COVID, whether we try to take the positives out of it or not, we just think now it's for doing the things that we really wanted to do, always dreamt about doing. And I know you're a massive person when it comes to vision and and goal setting. So I think, you know, it's amazing to be able to see that you're living that out, you know, in your real life, Amanda, which is great. So thank you so much for the update and letting us know.
Right.
Now I wanted to take it back to kind of where your career began. So just before we logged onto the call, interestingly, I've just found out that Amanda used to work for a nightclub. So is that where your career started, Amanda?
No, so my career started from a very young age. I always wanted to join the military. I knew I was going to join the military. Reason why: I came from Cornwall, I came from Penzance, very little work for females, etc., and all of that. And the industries were fishing or tourism and things like that. So I always knew I wanted to join the military. And so from the age of 8, that was my path. Now, in those days, I'm quite old, in those days, girls weren't allowed to join the military at 16. Girls had to be 17 to join the military. And so I went to school, went to my careers advisor, I want to go and join the military. And he said to me, no, girls don't do that. Girls become hairdressers or secretaries. And I said, no, I want to join the military. So I did. I joined the military at 17. And in those days, I originally wanted to be in the driving profession, but I was too short. There was a height thingy bob. So I was going to do that, I was too short. I wanted to go into telecommunications, I was too short. So I became what in those days was called a writer. Now, a writer is an admin professional, and we used to have what were known as P writers and G writers. General, so mail, admin, post stuff, or pay writers. But I went to not Dartmouth, I went to Raleigh. I was the second lot of girls to do mixed training. I literally lived in a room with 35 other people, which is the same as what men did, and did my basic training. And I was the first lot of girls that came out of training where we didn't stream either P or G, we were just writers. Because when you go to sea, you have to do both sides of the wall. So long story short, joined the Royal Navy in 1990 and did a number of jobs, one of which was I went to Northern Ireland, about 18 years old, served in Ireland. And in those days, you used to get danger money, £3.60 additional pay per day for working in Northern Ireland. And my dad said to me, he said, what are you doing with all this extra money? And I was like, oh, I'm saving, Dad. And my dad said, oh, okay, what are you saving for? A house. No, a car, I said a car. So Dad said, oh, okay. He said, and how much have you saved? None, Dad. I've drunk it all and shopped and whatever else. So my dad said to me, well, you ought to buy a house. So I said, oh, okay, yeah, good idea. Yeah, all right then, I'll do that. So I bought my first house at 19 years old, and I wasn't earning that much money. And so I took a job in a nightclub 2 nights a week, Friday nights and Saturday nights, to earn some extra money. And that money paid for my poll tax, my gas bill, my electricity bill, etc. And yeah, so that's where the nightclub bit comes in. But I was actually
did you see, was there more bonkers behaviour in the barracks or within the Navy or in the nightclub? Yeah, I thought so. Fantastic.
Because I came from Cornwall, and I was back in Cornwall in the nightclub working. It was a little tiny thing. It closed at 1 a.m. in the morning. It wasn't like this late nights and things like that. Even we didn't have nightclubs that opened until 2 in our area. It was like 1 o'clock, and yeah. So that was those bits, and then from there I went to the Falklands. Where did I work after the Falklands? I worked for the Royal Marines. There was a whole variety of jobs, but then I got bored, and in those days to get promoted, it was what was called dead man's shoes, and it was going to be another 7 years to get promoted to my next rank. So I was a leading hand, and it was going to take 7 years to get promoted to PO. And I was like, 7 years, I can't do the same job for 7 years, I'll be bored. So I was like, right, I've got 3 options. Either get promoted, well, that can't happen because of that. I either leave the military, or I dry your eyes, princess, and carry on just doing what you're doing. So that wasn't going to happen either. So I went for my commission. I became an officer. And in 1997, I became an officer. which meant I got a variety of other jobs, still in the Royal Navy, but a variety of other admin jobs. And as an officer, I've done everything from be the secretary of a maritime warfare centre to the PA to the High Commissioner in Sierra Leone, through to being the person that was responsible for moving people in and out of Iraq during the 2003 Gulf conflict, right the way through to running exercises off Scotland, pushing a desk and all sorts of things like that. So yeah, and wide variety.
Was there, as you were kind of going through your career, could you see that more and more women were coming into the military? Or how was it for you being in a particularly, I would imagine, male-dominated environment?
It was, I mean, the military, how many girls did we have? We probably had about 5,000 women in a force of about 50,000 people. So 10%, whatever sort of thing. When I joined, girls used to be called Wrens, and we used to have blue badges, and we were very much women. And as I said, I was the second lot of girls to go through mixed training. Had I joined 2 or 3 weeks before, I would have had to have worn, and this is no word of a lie, blue eyeshadow, blue mascara, and lipstick. Okay, it's a bloody good job that actually I joined 2 weeks later, because blue eyeshadow didn't suit me in the best of times and still wouldn't. But girls were girls. And when I joined 2 weeks later, we were just military personnel. And so it was about doing the job rather than being a girl. Does that make sense? They're very different.
Yeah, I think you think about that now and you think, I mean, if you just look at the Virgin advert now, and I used to work for travel, and it was always like, the girls must have makeup, you must not have any tattoos on show, if you must wear this particular, your skirt must be this length, your heel must be that length. And we had to be completely regimented. I remember working in Egypt, and our destination manager he would line us up, and he would check, and he would come down, and he would give us a razor. You haven't shaved today, go and shave. Your uniform's not ironed properly, go home. Like, you're not working until you look up. I just can't imagine that nowadays. It's crazy to think, isn't it?
And I mean, I was, although we were the first lot of girls to go through training, we were still expected to behave like women, but do the same as the men. And that was a massive sort of culture shift for the military, because up until then, girls didn't go to sea. So we were the second lot to go through this. And it was like, oh, sugar, how do we look after you? And how do we do those things? So when I worked for the Royal Marines, I was the only female in a whole male department. And they were just like, oh, okay, how do we talk to you? And I'll happily share this story, because I have shared it with others, and some people might find it funny, but I had to have an operation on my boobs, and I was very well endowed, and I still am, but I was very well endowed, and I worked in a whole male department, and the operation came through much earlier than it should have, and I had to go to my boss and say, sir, and he was like, yes. I said, I need to go to hospital, and I've just been offered a cancellation appointment, and it's tomorrow, and so he's like, oh, okay. And I explained, and he was like, yeah, good as gold. But then I developed some complications, and I ended up off work for a lot longer. So my boss sat down the whole of the department to say, when Amanda comes back, she's going to look very different. And they were like, what do you mean she's going to look different? She had her head chopped off. And he was like, no, she's going to have lost her boobs. And it was, for the next hour and a half, they sat there and told all boob jokes in order to get them out of their system before I came back to work. Now, that's 30 years ago. So I look now and I think, can you imagine somebody going off for an operation like that nowadays, and the boss sitting everybody down and saying to them, right, when Amanda comes back, you can't mention the boobs. They've disappeared, but you can't mention them. It just wouldn't happen. But back then, it was seen as, well, we need to make this as easy for Amanda coming back. And I was just like, okay, whatever.
I mean, yeah, I mean, to come back, especially after what you've gone through as well, and to learn that. But I guess we had a different mindset in those days, didn't we,
And
really?
that's
That
the thing.
it was almost like not to expect it, because we should never expect that, but it was a lot more acceptable, I guess, in our
And
own
I
way.
was the only girl, so do you know what? It was going to be pretty obvious there was a difference. Not being
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
but I think the military's moved on. So to answer the sort of question, I think we went through a phase back then, 30 years ago, of girls trying to be boys in the military because we were expected to do the same job. Whereas nowadays, it's just about people.
yeah.
And it's people do that job. It doesn't matter whether you're a boy or a girl, male, female, whatever else. It's about doing the job and being able to do the job.
Yeah.
And
Well,
you get promoted on merit rather than you're a girl, you're a boy.
and I think that's going to be my next question, really, was when you were supporting all these different people, did they know how to utilize your skills, or was it very much you had to build that yourself?
The military is quite interesting. In the Royal Navy, you move jobs every 2 years. And invariably you get promoted and you move around, but you have a competency framework and a skill set, and different ranks do different things and different jobs need different things. So there is a lot of on-job learning or courses to do stuff, but the military have that sort of mentality of work hard, play hard. And so that for me has always been one of my mantras. It's like, yeah, do you know what? Work hard, play hard. You make the most of the opportunities that you've got at that time. And so bosses don't necessarily know how to use your skill sets because that's not the way they're taught to work with their people. You have leaders and you have managers, and some leaders are good managers and some managers are good leaders, but actually sometimes they can be good at one and shit at the other. And it's knowing and playing to those strengths and skill sets.
Yeah, absolutely. And what would you say is, I mean, obviously, having your operation would have been an incredibly challenging thing for you personally to deal with as well. But what would you say was your biggest challenge throughout your career? You were with the military for over 20 years, weren't you? So I can imagine you faced with all the adversity that you faced, with all the things that the campaigns that you were part of around the world. What would you say was your biggest challenge?
Okay, the boobs certainly weren't the biggest challenge. They were just the sort of story and learning to work with men and in those environments. Biggest challenge, mentally, post the Gulf in 2003. So during the Iraq conflict, I got augmented to the battle staff that looked after maritime people. So I was the authority for people moving in and out of country. So literally the day before we went into Qasar, I had to get 7 foreign nationals off my ship or off the ships that were in the Gulf because their countries hadn't signed up to them being at war, because that's effectively what we were going into, a conflict, and it could get classed as war. So, but that wasn't the challenge there even, because I was at sea on an aircraft carrier. My husband was ashore as an army person fighting. I didn't know where he was. He didn't know where I was. So that was quite an emotional thing at the time. But day 2 of the Gulf conflict, 2 helicopters crashed. 2 aircraft from 849 crashed and 7 of my friends died. And I was responsible for the administration of their deaths. So writing the signals to the UK to tell them that we'd had this accident, writing the paperwork to process their deaths, going through all of their possessions and packing it all up to send home to their families. That was part of my responsibility and my team. And so that was quite hard. Then we also had, we found half a dozen Iranian fishermen whose ship had been run over by somehow in the Gulf, and we had to process them and get them back to repatriated to their country, even though they'd passed away. So 2003 was quite a bleak time, and my husband and I, we both came home from the Gulf. We went away to Fuerteventura, and we came home with a house, because that caused us to be probably the first time that I've reevaluated life and realised that life is too short. And so we came home with a house. We bought a holiday house. It's at that point we decided we wanted to have children, and we were in a massive conflict at that point, because he was like, there are so many children in the world that don't have parents, why don't we just adopt, or let's adopt from overseas or something like that. Whereas my maternal instincts, I didn't have a maternal bone in my body pre the Gulf, but my maternal instincts kicked in, and I was like, no, I want my child. And so that was a massive thing. And then we found out we couldn't have kids. And so that was an emotional upheaval, hugely. That was from 2003 to 2007 was a massive challenge emotionally. I developed tinnitus at the same time, and so had permanent white noise in my head, in my ears, if you want to, whichever way you want to describe it. And there was a lot going on. And so fast forward, I got promoted. I went to be the logistics officer of a ship, and went out to, I was the logistics officer of HMS Portland in the Caribbean, doing humanitarian relief and anti-drugs operations, and we were out chasing drug smugglers and things like that. Came home, hubby and I went away to Fuerteventura, came home that time pregnant. Wow. And it's like, we'd been told we couldn't have kids, and come home, oh, okay. And then I was pregnant with twins. And so that's the beginning of 2008. And then that's where this journey really started, because in June 2008, my children were born, and then they died. And they lived for 8 hours, and then they died aged 8 hours. And at that point was my second realization that life is too short, and life can be incredibly cruel. And so that was my catalyst then. Even though I didn't leave the military then, that was the catalyst for me going, do you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I love the military, don't get me wrong. I love the military and I loved what I did, but I didn't want to do that anymore. Yeah. So, yeah.
Wow. I mean, just listening to that, I mean, just even in that last five, like, you know, what you've just explained to us in the last 5 minutes is just incredibly moving. And it's really difficult, because obviously a lot of us haven't been in that situation, or we may have been in parts of that, of your, you know, like share those parts of your journey. But I was going to ask you how COVID was for you, because obviously that was quite a big, for us that haven't been in the military before, that was a really big thing to deal with. And I think coming out of COVID now, and again, please forgive me, I'm not trying to kind of relate that to what you've been through, but I think a lot of people on this call, or any of our members watching, are at that real pivotal point now where they're thinking, okay, that last 2 years was really heavy, and we all reevaluated a lot of things that we wanted to do. Where do I go from here? So, you know, forgive me for relating it kind of way. I just wanted to kind of see, you know, from your perspective, those people that are in those jobs, or if they are working as full-time, or, you know, maybe part-time employed, where they're thinking now, God, you know, is this my career that I'm going to have for the rest of the you know, before I retire? Or is it going to be, you know, is this the right line of work that I want to be working with? I really wanted to know more about becoming a VA. So would you share that?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
For me, these were my wake-up calls that life is too short. And you said right at the very beginning, you're aware that I like goals and vision and things like that. For me, what I realised is quite often when we would set at work, we're asked to set objectives and goals and what do you want to achieve, etc. But what I realised is work is only one part of us. And actually, our goals are probably much more than that. So they could be spiritual, they could be relationships, they could be health, they could be well-being, they could be personal development, professional development, wanting to travel, whatever it is, having that ability to look after, freedom and flexibility to look after kids, freedom and flexibility to look after elderly relatives. We are much more complex than just being at work. And so for me, when I realized that life was too short, it wasn't about grabbing opportunities and going out there and doing stuff. It was going, okay, what's going to make me and my family happy? And so for anybody on this call who's thinking, do you know what am I doing? And I'm aware there's potentially people listening to this who've been made redundant, and actually they're going through grief. And it's like, what do you mean you're going to make me redundant? I've done this role for numbers of years and all of that. And actually, it's about going back and almost finding ourselves and about what makes us happy. So people look at the decision we made to sell our house. We had a lovely house, but actually it was about quality of life that we wanted. My husband and I, we're getting old. We want to slow down at some point. We still want to work. We still want to earn money, but we want to do something that's more for us and have that freedom and flexibility that when the children get a little bit older, we can go traveling. We never did it as students or whatever. We're going to have we're going to have this camper van. We've got a motorhome and we're going to disappear off. And my children say to me, "Were you taking us with you?" And my husband's like, "No, we're just going." It's like, and I'm like, "Honey, we can't do that for a few more years. Our children are not old enough for us to do that yet." But it's about having that sort of thing. So I would say to people, goals aren't just about work, money, whatever. They literally encompass everything. So whether you use the wheel of life diagram, whether you just take a piece of paper and write down what's important to you, the categories that are important, and then write what you're looking for, to me, that's a really good thing to do. And we should all do that on a regular basis anyway, because working pays the bills, but it allows us to do those other things. It's not necessarily the driver. And I look back at those who I was connected with in the military, and I look at some of them who are now getting promoted, and I think, yeah, that could have been me. And a friend of mine has recently been promoted to the first female rear admiral, and she's absolutely lovely, and I love it to bits. And I look at it and think, yeah, would I want that? No.
Yeah.
Because it's not the bits that make me tick. What makes me tick is practicing spellings on the school run in the morning. Actually, no, that doesn't make me tick. But hopefully, do you know what I mean? It's so much wider. So I would say to people, think about, what is the exam question you're actually trying to solve? And do you know what? It's okay if that exam question changes occasionally and that you want something else. And just be prepared to adjust, veer and haul, and adjust the path. That sounds a bit weird and a bit spiritual, but hopefully.
No, I was going to come on to this later, but you kindly sent me those wonderful books by Bob Berg, and The Go-Giver and The Go-Giver Leader. And exactly what you were just saying, then it says to you what makes you happy, and really finding out what actually, when you write it down, just exactly as you said, Amanda, when you write down what makes you happy, it's really interesting when you start writing those things down. And actually, work is quite far removed from that, and it's all about focusing on those things that really make you feel thankful and happy. And I think that, if you could take something, what Amanda's just said about writing down those things that make you happy, that's a really fantastic exercise to do. I started doing it. It's amazing actually how long it takes you to try to think about those things, but it helps you to prioritize the things that are really important to you in your life as well, which I think is great. And so many people have transferable skills, so it could be an exceptional PA or administrative professional, or in many different types of roles. But I think the most petrifying thing, and you know, if people have recently started out their journey as a VA, a lot of the questions I get asked all the time are, okay, so I know I can do the job and I know I'm really good at the job, but how do I get clients? And where do I find them? Where do I go? And how do I, you know, networking is very daunting. We know this, you know, it naturally, it is something that doesn't come naturally to us all. Nobody just wakes up one day and go, I'm an amazing networker. It doesn't happen like that. It's years and years of building up, but finding your right place, I think. So what would you say to those people that think, right, I've got all the skills in my box here and I want to go out and get it? So what would your advice be to them?
I'm tempted to ask Sarah to get her to type in what I'm likely to give you the answer to, but I won't put her on spot. To go and find those first clients, you need to become a networking tart, okay? In the beginning, I think people have to become a networking tart. You need to get out there and talk to people. And so when somebody starts their VA business, I always say, go and talk to people, go to as many networking events as you can for the first 90 days. So I only ask you to become a tart for 90 days, but become a tart for 90 days so that you get used to talking to people and you work out where your, and I hate saying the phrase, but where your tribe congregate, where the people that you can build relationships with congregate. Because it is a cliche and it is in Bob's book, but people do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And so you've got to get out there and start to get to know people, to like people, and allow them to trust you. And they only do that when they see you on a regular basis. And so the big thing for me is go out there, talk to people, because you might be surprised where your ideal clients hang out or where that first client hangs out. Now, as a VA industry as a whole, we know that people generally get their clients through their existing network of connections, followed by networking, followed by social media. And that sort of cliche of it takes 7 to 14 touch points is actually quite true, because if you only go to somewhere once a month, it's going to take you 7 to 14 months before somebody goes, oh yeah, what do you do? Who are you? Whereas if you become a tart and they get used to seeing you and building that relationship with you, they're starting to knock down that know, like, trust. That 7 to 14 touch points gets knocked down much faster. And then if you start connecting with them on social media or commenting and building that relationship, you're really escalating that much faster. Mm-hmm. But it's not only about finding the right people, it's also about finding the people that you don't want. So when I started out, I wanted to work with 50-something-year-old men who were used to having a secretary, who were used to having that person outside their office door, etc. And I went, my first networking was all female. There was no 55-year-old men in that room. I'm proud that you're a networking tart too, Sarah.
Yeah.
But I went networking with women. Women scared the living daylights out of me when it came to networking, because I expected them to be talking knitting patterns, gin recipes, and kids and all of those things. And I was like, hey, I just want to go, I'm ex-military. You want to work with me? Of course you do. I had that real attitude, and I had to get that beaten out of me to realise that that wasn't what networking was about, and that isn't how you got your clients. People would work with you if they got to know you, like you, and trust you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, just going back to what you were saying about being a networking tart, when you are in that environment, when you see people all the time, and you're seeing them week after week, or you might see them 2 or 3 times in a week if you go into different networking events, when they've seen you so much, there's no greater pleasure for them than the next time they see you to say, oh my God, I've just had a conversation with this person, I need to link you up.
Correct.
And it's almost like they share your excitement, which is amazing. But and very much, I used to be very, very well networked in the city until I moved out to the NEC, and it was almost as if I just didn't know anybody. Yeah, I wasn't. you know, I wasn't in the city. I wasn't that person anymore that people wanted to ask for this, that, and the other, you know, free networking events at hotels and all this kind of stuff. And I thought to myself, I'm going to give it some time. And I went back to this networking event. I walked in and I must have been in there for about half an hour. And I looked around and I thought, why am I here? Because it's really negative. Everybody's too cliquey. Everybody knows each other. Everyone was smiling at each other, but then talking about everybody else behind their back. And I just thought, why have I driven all the way here, paid £20 to come to this event and listen to that?
Yeah.
And I just walked out of there and I thought, all those people, they're just not my people. And then I just got in the car and came home and had a far more productive couple of phone calls after that, which worked quite well. And so it's really interesting that you say that, because that's something that I've only really just realised myself.
But you've got to work out where is the people that you want to build those relationships with. And the reason I would say become a networking tart is because actually I want you to slow down. Once people start to know who you are, what you do, then you slow it down to relevant networking. But actually, you want people to go, oh yeah, you're that person, you do that, or oh, I know some VAs, let me connect you.
Yeah.
But there is no point going somewhere if your people aren't there, or your ideal client isn't there, or the people you want to support aren't there. So do you know what? Hands up, I don't go local networking anymore because my ideal client isn't in that room. But I do a lot of online networking where my ideal client hangs out, or trade shows or professional things. So I've pivoted, God, that's a good word for COVID, isn't it? To be where my audience or the people I want to work with are. So it doesn't mean it's necessarily at the local women in business networking or something like that. Going to a conference or something is much more important.
Yeah, absolutely. So you actually bought VACT many years ago. So you went and you were undergone the training.
Yep.
And then completed the training and then bought the company. Is that right?
Ish. So typical military, you always want to be the best that you're doing. You want to have the right piece of paper, the skills, etc. I was institutionalized. I'd done 23 years in the military. And so I knew nothing about the business world. So when I left the military, I did the VA, in leaving the military, I did the VA mastery course with VACT and a lady called Carmen McDougall. And I did that. That was great, absolutely perfect, helped me get out there and do those things. And then about 12 months later, I became Carmen's VA. And then about 6 months later, I became a licensed franchisee or licensed trainer for the south of England. And then Carmen decided she was going to close the company. And I was like, no, I've already invested too much money here. And so I bought her out. And so, but what you need to remember is in the military, not only are you doing your day job, but you coach, train, and mentor. So I'd been coaching and training and mentoring since I'd first had my first promotion in the early 90s. And I'd fulfilled a variety of training roles and coaching roles and over the years. So when I launched my VA business, I either wanted to take employees, franchise it, or move into coaching, training, and mentoring. Because, as I said, we used to change jobs every 2 years. And that's why being a VA also excited me, because you worked with a variety of people. You weren't doing the same thing day in, day out. So 2014, I became a licensed trainer. 6 months later, I bought the company. And then I ran my doing business alongside the training business for a couple of years. By then I had 2 children. Neither children liked to sleep. I had a husband that had a business, and I went, do you know what? I just can't do everything. And so I sold my doing business in 2016, 2017. That's what, end of 2016, early 17. I still support my husband's company, so it still keeps my hand in, still keeps me learning the marketing stuff, still keeping my hand in all of those other things that you need to do. And now I purely coach, train, and mentor.
Yeah, amazing, fantastic. And I think we've also, congratulations, because most recently as well, so you've also Now it's it's the UK VA conference, the UK VA awards, and forgive me, the online
Be My VA directory.
Be My VA directory. So tell us about that. And I'm also I know you've got some exciting plans coming up, Amanda. So I appreciate if whatever you can reveal or tell us, that would be very exciting.
So the UK VA conference and the UK VA awards used to be owned by VACT. So they were owned by VACT from 2007 till 2012. So actually what I've done is I've bought them, but I've bought them back under the brand. So for me, it feels like they're coming home almost, even though I didn't own it back in that day. So they're coming back. So UK VA conference and awards, they go hand in hand almost, although they've been sort of run quite separately for the last few years. But what I'm doing is I'm rejuvenating and reinvigorating, I think, conferences. So for a number of years, and you will have seen this yourself, Dan, we've all moved to this virtual space, but actually what I want to do is go back to destination events to get people in a room so they can do that networking, they can do that sort of extra stuff. So I have got a conference. It's going to be in September. It's on the 30th of September. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that bit. But yeah, phew. I realised as it came out of my mouth, I was like, am I allowed to say that bit? But it's about coming back to a destination event and getting VAs in a room together. And so we've got the conference, and then the awards are going to be part of that. And what I'm doing with the awards is putting it back into destination events as well, because they've been sort of bolted into other events, and there's nothing wrong with that, and they're good awards. But what I want to do is say to people, look, let's go and celebrate you, but actually let's also celebrate the people that help you get there. So it's not just your award, it's your partner's award. It's saying thank you to the family, to say, do you know what, I work bloody hard, but actually I appreciate you helping me get to there. So that's part of that. And then the Be My VA directory is an online directory for virtual assistants to advertise themselves, but at the same time to allow people to find their VA. And I'm always being asked, Amanda, can you recommend a VA? Well, do you know what? I remember a lot, but I don't remember everybody's skill set. And so this is just a great way of saying, hey, look here, you can see what that person can do, and you're not relying on my brain to try and remember.
I think it's difficult as well when we're both community leaders as well, so it's like you almost don't want to kind of, you know, it's just about being you know, Tom supports me as my VA, and so I actively try to support him in getting, you know, we work together really, really well. And if a client opportunity comes up, but it would be really difficult for me to be able to do that with the VAs that are part of our network. But if there are opportunities that come up out there, then it's a fantastic space for people to be able to post about those and find out about those and share their skills, because everyone has just so many different specialities. And that's one thing I love about the VA world as well. It's just the collaborative associate and the passing business between each other. It just goes to show how incredibly talented the networking is, because you've got to be great at networking to be able to refer people and refer them well without damaging your own reputation, which is really admirable for sure. So
and also the thing with it though is the Be My VA directory has been around for a long time, so it actually has really good SEO and good credibility in the domain search engine. So by being a member of it, you can hyperlink to your thing. So actually what we're also doing is we're helping people raise their websites, raise their profile whilst being somewhere else. So for me, this isn't just about advertising, it's about helping business owners find the people and to share our message, but actually it's also about helping people market themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, congratulations, Amanda. Obviously, I'm really looking forward to learning more details. And obviously, as anything comes in or anything you want us to share, please let us know and we'll share that with all the community as well. But I have to ask you, only because this has recently come up on a conversation this week, was about there's this word recession bouncing around at the end of the year. So again, I'm conscious of either, people that the more experienced PA or VAs that are thinking, I've got all these established clients now, how am I going to be able to mitigate kind of their expectation and with price rises, etc. And then new people coming into the profession or coming into the industry thinking, is it the right time for me now? I mean, we saw an absolutely massive explosion for the wants and needs and of outsourcing, which is great, because we will say that, if it's not something you're good at yourself, get somebody that's good at it, because it's just amazing to have that partnership together. So how do you feel about it all? I mean, I know it's kind of like, I don't want to kind of bring the doom and gloom, but if people are kind of thinking about how they can kind of prepare themselves for that, what would your advice be, do you think?
So VAs notoriously do well in recessions, actually, because business owners don't need to employ somebody 5 days a week to sit there on the off chance that their admin team is needed. So VAs notoriously do well during a recession because people need to outsource stuff.
Yeah.
Technical term stuff, but they need to outsource. And so I would say it comes back to knowing what you want, who you want to work with. Do you know what? I am not this person. I'm not a coach that says you must have a niche, do not pass go unless you have a niche. Because a niche is just a marketing tool. And so if you do have a niche, try and not all VAs do, think about how can I support that sector in a cost affordable way that they therefore want to work with me. And think about that. So if you are a VA to, I don't know, dentists, it's like, well, okay, does dentistry get affected by a recession? Or actually, what might they outsource in that particular thing? And think about what your businesses that you service do and what they might need. So that might be where you start creatively thinking about the packages or the pricing or the models or the things that they need. And so as VAs, we then start to sell those things to attract that ideal person. So for me, the recession piece doesn't worry me if I was a VA looking for clients. We might need to be a bit more creative. For those who are thinking, oh, actually, I might be made redundant or I might have to leave my day job and set up, do you know what? The work is out there. It really is. We don't know the true number of VAs in the UK or in the world. We'll have second guesses and we'll do wet finger in the air and go, oh, it's this number. Nobody knows, because there isn't a category in HMRC's records. We're an unregulated industry. So, and it's a job title. Some people will call themselves a freelance PA, some will call themselves a VA, some will call themselves a bookkeeper, some will call themselves a web developer, a copywriter, a social media manager. Do you know what? They're just job titles. This is about what do you want to do for the people you want to do. And so I'd say go for it. I don't ever regret what I do.
Yeah, no, and I think I was forced into being self-employed because of my redundancy.
Yep.
But actually it is tough and it is hard because and to me, it's not, it's the managing the business 360 degrees. It's the challenge and the time, because not only are you trying to service the best for your clients, you're trying to make sure that your business is ticking all the right boxes and doing what it should be at the right time and paying bills on the right time and all that kind of stuff. And it's been amazing because the other week I went out on Friday in the afternoon and my friend was like, aren't you working on Friday? It's like, well, yeah, but I've done all the work I need to do this week, so I'm going to go out. And it's like, it was just really weird being able to say something like that. My friend's just messaged me today and she's like, should we go to Alton Towers on Monday because it'll be quieter? And I was like, yeah, okay, that's great, let's do that then. If my diary is clear and I could fit it in, then great. And it's brought, like you said, Amanda, an added quality of life for me personally.
Yep. But your friends don't see when you're sat there on a Sunday night writing social media posts or thinking about, oh, I've got that meeting on Tuesday, what do I need to do or prepare or whatever. They don't see the other stuff. They only see, oh, you've taken the afternoon off and you're sat in the pub having a beer or whatever. They don't see the rest of it. Or the fact that when you haven't got clients and you're sat there at 3 a.m. in the morning thinking, sugar, how am I going to pay my mortgage? And do you know what? This links into play the long game. Think about what is it you're trying to achieve and put those steps in place. And I always say to people, if you don't have to give up your day job whilst you're setting up, please don't give up your day job whilst you're setting up, because it will take time to get clients, to earn money, to have that. And it will feel hard, but actually it's doable.
Yeah, absolutely. I love in here that you put, so we know that Amanda likes nice champagne, Belgian beer and Belgian chocolate, which I absolutely love. You put there. I noted that down just because it was incredibly, like, you know, when you sent me those books, it was incredibly, it was such a kind gesture and it's so lovely. And I think, you know, that for me is something like I'll always remember, and you always, you know, and so I have made a literally massive note in bold in size 72 on here, Amanda, to know that is what you like. So thank you so much for putting that in. But just to finish off today, what you also put in your biography is your straight talking, no nonsense advice. Okay, so to close today, what 3 pieces of information would you can't go wrong with bubbles and chocolate, love that. What 3 pieces of information would you leave with everybody today? And, you know, can you also let everybody know how they can get in contact with you as well? Because it's important that, you know, I'm sure people here will want to have a chat with you as well.
Can I be naughty? And it's like 3.5.
Of course.
Okay, so the first one is core values. Know your core values. Live by them. Don't just say them, but know your core values and live by them. So that's my first one, is my core values. If you were to cut me down the middle, they're stamped through me like a stick of rock. Okay. Now, okay, they were beaten into me in the military and whatever, and very much my core values are my military core values. But know your core values and live by them. Okay. So that's number 1. Number 2, it's okay to be candid, provided you do it with authenticity. And that's why I say it's like 2 and a bit. Because for many years, I've always described myself as straight talking, no nonsense, no bullshit. It's what you see is what you get with me. I haven't got time to fancy it all up or anything like that. And I never ever saw it as a negative. But actually, I listened to an interview with Karen Brady and Stephen Bartlett recently. And she talks about being straight talking and whatever, but she labeled it as candid. So for anybody that follows me on social media, I'm going to change my bio to have the word candid, because it sounds much nicer than straight talking, no nonsense, no bullshit. But for me, that one is, but do it with authenticity. So, and authenticity is one of those words that everybody sees as a bit of a buzzword. Well, I don't. For me, if you live your life authentically and do what you say you're going to do, they go hand in hand. And that links back to my core values, really. And then the third piece of advice is listen to your gut and your intuition. Because actually, our gut knows what we should or shouldn't be doing, but all too often we let our head talk ourselves out of it. And where I've made mistakes in business, it's when I've let my head rule rather than my gut. And that's a real tricky one. And so for me, that's the thing. But all of that is encompassed by being a go-giver.
Amazing. Amanda, you are so incredibly supportive to our community, and to, you know, so incredibly respected by so many people in, you know, across the UK and beyond. And it's amazing to see what you've built through all the challenges that you faced, and just how positive you're. Always so positive, bubbly, and you always just share the most golden nuggets with us. So thank you so much for joining us today. We hope all goes well with your house. I will send a follow-up email. I'll copy Amanda in. We'd love to get your feedback, and you know, please do connect with Amanda. I'll include all of her contact details, so you've got
that in there for you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And thanks everybody so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thanks everyone. Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.